Danny was performing magic. He spread out the deck of cards for the audience to choose a favorite card. Just then, the nearby building also showed the Seven of Diamonds, which was the card the audience chose. The performance immediately exploded. Danny received endless applause from the audience. Elsewhere, Kenny was also a great hypnotist. With just a hug, he could make a woman fall asleep. Then with a snap of his fingers, the other person immediately woke up. However, all the parts of the body at this time stopped working. Even the $20 coin in front of her could not be taken. In New York, there was also a guy calling himself a great magician. Jack said that anyone who could discover the trick in the performance would get $100 in their pocket. Then he used the magic wand to bend the iron spoon. In the blink of an eye, the spoon was bent. Who knew that at this moment an audience member stepped up and took a spoon out of Jack's sleeve? This caused Jack to lose $100. But when he got off the train, the man felt something was wrong. Checking his body, the wallet was gone. One evening in Los Angeles was also equally exciting. When Henley stepped onto the stage to perform, the assistants quickly locked her limbs, then directly dropped into the water tank below. The task: in 1 minute, Henley will have to unlock to escape. Otherwise, the piranhas above will be released. But unfortunately, the chain got stuck at this time, causing Henley to ask for help. Seeing this, everyone frantically broke the glass of the tank. Just at this moment, the clock turned 1 minute. The piranhas rushed down. They began to tear apart the delicious bait in the tank. The audience outside was very scared and screamed. But in the crowd, a voice suddenly rang out. That person was none other than Henley. The extremely thrilling performance was also successfully completed. After that performance, Henley was sent a strange card. The back clearly stated the location and told her to go there. At this time, the other 3 people also received similar cards, all pointing to the same specific location. Not long after, the 4 people arrived at the rendezvous. But the room door could not be opened at this time. However, it could not make it difficult for Jack. With just simple operations, the room door was opened. On the floor was a flower. Henley just held it and put it in a nearby vase, causing the water in the vase to immediately flow out. At this time, Danny checked the room and found that the light bulb was broken. So Kenny had to fix the light bulb. Unexpectedly, the 4 corners of the wall activated the projection lights with many strange images. Jack just randomly pressed one. Time shifted to a year later. The 4 people at this time were called the Four Horsemen. They traveled everywhere to perform magic. Tonight, they will create an extremely explosive performance, that is to rob a bank. So how will they do it? First, randomly select an audience member. He has $5 million deposited at a bank in Paris. This is truly unbelievable. The group decided to make the money disappear. But how to do that when they are standing on stage in the US? Then the lucky audience member was put on a teleportation hat. It would help him get to the Paris bank immediately. Before being teleported, Jack had the man draw a card. Then he would directly sign it. Then they put him in a strange machine. As soon as the button was pressed, the machine immediately slammed shut. The audience thought the man had been crushed. Who knew that just a second later, he was actually present in the Paris bank's vault. Jack told him to leave the signed card and the performance ticket on the pile of money. Then activate the button on the hat. The money was sucked up into a pipe back to the US. Very quickly, $5 million fell like rain on the performance stage. While the audience was competing to pick up the money, the performance officially ended. At this time, the Paris bank staff also received a report to check, but opening the safe only left the signed card and the performance ticket. After this incident, the police immediately launched an investigation. The person in charge of this case was Police Officer Dylan and Inspector Alma. Dylan was originally a person who did not believe in magic. Very quickly sent people to the Four Horsemen's house to arrest them and interrogated each person. First was Kenny, but this was a person very good at manipulating psychology. No matter how he was asked, Kenny still knew how to answer without revealing any loopholes. The second person interrogated was Danny, but he was even tougher than the previous people, making Dylan extremely annoyed to the point of wanting to use force. Who knew that just standing up, Danny did a magic trick that made the handcuffs jump to the other person's hand, and the key had been put in the soft drink can long ago. After a long day of interviews without any results, the police had to reluctantly release the Four Horsemen. However, they did not easily give up this case and went to find a silver-haired old man. He was Bradley, also a famous magician. But at this time he had retired and worked on decoding magic tricks. The day the Four Horsemen performed, Bradley also came to watch and recorded a video. So Bradley took the police to the stage that day, then put Dylan in the teleportation machine. In the blink of an eye, he was taken to the room below. It turned out that the Four Horsemen had made a room exactly like the Paris bank. But Dylan still didn't understand how they stole money from the bank. Bradley explained at this time, the audience member that day was actually not randomly selected. The four horsemen had been following and knew his information in advance. When on stage, they deliberately arranged and called him. And why the money in the bank also disappeared was because before, when following the target, they knew that he was about to transport $5 million to the bank. So they found a way to hide in that money truck, then stole it during transportation and replaced it with $5 million of fake money. This money is made of flammable paper. When it burns, it will leave no traces. This is why when the police entered, they only saw the card and the ticket. At this time, the four horsemen had boarded the plane. Today they announced that there would be another performance. The sponsor for this performance was a billionaire named Arthur. Knowing this news, the police couple immediately went there. At the performance venue, the audience flocked to fill the street. They just wanted to see the four horsemen perform magic once. This shows how great their appeal is. To prepare the best for the siege, Dylan had the city surrounded. Before going on stage, Bradley went to the main male group. He loudly declared that he would expose their tricks. But who knew they were not afraid? But Danny even wanted to show a trick directly. He brought out a deck of cards and told Bradley to choose a card. Who knew he would directly say that the card was in Danny's sleeve? But this time the old man was wrong, because the card was on his chest pocket, and there was also the phrase, "Get lost" on it. Being played a trick, Bradley could only turn around and leave. Not long after, the performance officially began. They introduced the distinguished guests. That was the police couple Dylan and Alma, who were determined to expose the truth and arrest them. Next was the sponsor for this program to take place, Arthur. The first magic trick was called the Invisible Rabbit. At this time, Henley released the rabbit into an empty box. Unexpectedly, when it was opened, the rabbit had completely disappeared. Then Danny also decoded this trick. In fact, the rabbit did not go anywhere, but it was hidden behind a mirror inside the box. However, this was just the opening. The next performance was more interesting. Kinney said that the audience should write down all the money in their accounts on a piece of paper. Then he called a few random people, yet he guessed the correct amount of money of those people. Unexpectedly, he said that everyone was wrong. Then he called Arthur down to the stage to cooperate in the performance. At the same time, Jack also brought a giant envelope, inside which was written the exact amount of money in Arthur's account. The audience below was also asked to shine a flashlight on the paper in their hands. On the stage, Jack also took out a giant light and shone it on Arthur's check. Who knew the money on it kept decreasing, and below the money written on the audience's paper kept increasing. At this time, the four horsemen revealed the truth. It turned out that the audience below were all victims of a scam. They had bought insurance from Arthur's company, but all had been abandoned and robbed of their money. And now all the money of everyone has returned to their accounts. This made the crowd below very happy. At this time, he on the stage knew he had been tricked. Intending to rush to catch Kinney, his legs had been chained from who knows when. Dylan below saw the situation and immediately sent people to surround them. However, the four horsemen managed to escape. Once again, Dylan helplessly lost his prey. Meanwhile, Arthur still couldn't swallow his anger. He invited Bradley to meet. If Bradley could expose the horsemen, he would pay him a huge amount of money. Another person who was just as angry as Arthur was Police Officer Dylan. He had never believed in magic, but all the things that the four horsemen had caused could not be explained. At this time, Alma also told him a legend. In the past, there was a group of people who used the all-seeing eye symbol to do magic. They robbed the rich and then shared it with the poor. This group has always existed, but only recruits people twice every century. She thinks the four horsemen are the descendants of the eye. Alma also believes that there is still another hidden horseman, the one who is really behind everything. At this time, Dylan took out his phone to check and found that it was being tracked. After checking the recording, he found out that it was Danny who had swapped his phone in the interrogation room. However, Dylan wanted to use that phone to find the location of the four horsemen. At this time, the group had also smelled danger, so they immediately packed up and retreated, leaving only Jack behind to destroy the evidence. When the police arrived, there was nothing left in the house. Suddenly, Jack appeared from nowhere and successfully controlled Dylan's subordinates. Hearing the noise, he immediately ran over. Who knew he would also be easily defeated by Jack? Then he took the opportunity to jump into the garbage chute and run down. Next, he stole a car and drove away in front of Dylan. Fortunately, Alma also drove to the scene at this time. The two quickly got into the car and chased after him, determined not to let Jack have a chance to escape. The two sides created an extremely dramatic chase on the street. The police even mobilized a helicopter to chase after him. It seemed that Jack had no way to escape this time. Seeing that there were too many cars on the bridge to escape, he crashed into the bridge railing, causing the car to overturn. The car exploded. Jack was confirmed dead. At this time, the four horsemen were left with only 3 people, but that did not stop them. The group even announced that they would take money from the New York Treasury safe. Dylan immediately sent people to protect the safe, who knew that when they arrived, it was gone. At this time, an employee said that a truck had just left here. So they rushed outside and indeed found that truck. Very quickly they stopped the truck, and when opened, there was indeed a safe inside. But they did not rush to open it, but let it continue its journey. The police just needed to follow that truck to get to the horsemen. At this time, the internet was also full of information that the four horsemen would perform for the last time tonight. Knowing that this was the last chance to catch them, the police mobilized all their forces. The truck carrying the safe arrived at the performance venue. Soon a girl appeared, but who knew that she was Bradley's person, and he was also following the horsemen and exposing their tricks. At this time, the police also opened the safe. Unexpectedly, they were tricked again, because inside were all toy balloons. At this time, the performance at the square also began, forcing the police to immediately rush there. On the roof, the three magicians had also begun. They said that this would be the most special performance ever. For one night only, everyone would know what magic is. At this time, the police also had to rush to the roof, but what they caught were just mannequins. The three real people were now in the opposite building. They said that tonight they would perform a disappearing magic trick and then run away together. Their bodies at this time also turned into money and disappeared into the air. Dylan and Alma in the crowd also accepted the truth. They had lost the battle with the four horsemen. On the other side, Bradley was going to get his car to go home, who knew that when he pressed the unlock button, he saw that the car was full of money. The police quickly rushed to arrest him, but Bradley was only wronged. He wanted to explain everything to Dylan. In fact, the safe had not been moved, but it was hidden behind a giant glass, just like the rabbit magic trick they had performed before. This directly tricked the police, making them think that the real safe was on the truck and chased after it. When no one was here, a person appeared, and that person was none other than Jack. He was actually not dead. When he was chased by the police, Jack deliberately drove onto the bridge. Here, his teammates were waiting, taking advantage of the chaos. They swapped the car, and the person in the exploded car was just a corpse stolen from the morgue. At this time, Jack just broke the safe and took the money to put in Bradley's car. Dylan curiously asked who was behind this, but Bradley really didn't know who it was. He could be any one of us, but when he finished saying that, Bradley suddenly realized. Turning around, Dylan was gone. It turned out that he was now outside the bars. He was also the one behind everything. All the plans were to put Bradley in jail, because he was an extremely arrogant person, always thinking that he was ahead, but actually several steps behind. That's why Bradley was not selected by the eye. This made Bradley's jealousy rise, demanding to destroy everything. And this was the end for him. From now until the end of his life, he would have to live behind bars. Meanwhile, the four horsemen had gathered. They gathered the 4 cards that were sent at the beginning of the movie, then used it to scan the card on the nearby tree, directly turning on the lights of the amusement park. At this time, Dylan also appeared in front of them, making everyone surprised to know who was really behind it. Then the 5 people went into the carousel game together. Each person climbed onto a horse and disappeared in the rotation. A year after completing the final performance, the 4 horsemen had completely retired, waiting for the next mission. At this time, Danny had just returned home from outside. As soon as he entered, he accidentally triggered a trap, resulting in the strange girl lying on the chair being beheaded. But as soon as he looked, Danny knew it was just a cheap magic trick, yet when he turned around, the girl was sitting behind him. Before asking who she was, Danny had directly tied her hands. Just at this moment, he received a phone call, but who knew that as soon as he turned around, the girl had disappeared without leaving a trace. He looked at the phone and saw that Dylan had asked the group to gather. It turned out that he was announcing a new member. It was also the girl who had played with Danny just now. Lula would replace Henley because she had left earlier. In addition, Dylan also gave the group a new mission. That was to monitor the CEO of Okta Company. His name was Owen, who was about to launch a new generation of phones. But Okta Company had installed a chip in the machine that could steal all personal information of users. They would sell that information to make high profits, so the 4 horsemen would have to expose Owen's crimes. Not long after, at an Okta Company conference, the group disguised themselves and infiltrated. Jack disguised himself as a security guard, collecting all the bananas so that they would not get inside. Meanwhile, Danny disguised himself as a waiter, but in the blink of an eye he transformed into another person, directly successfully infiltrating the conference. Then he changed his appearance again to a maintenance engineer and broke into the surveillance room. Then he got into an argument with the employee here. While the other person was not paying attention, Danny put a mental patient symbol on his hand. At this time, the security team also rushed in. Seeing the card on his hand, they arrested the employee. The situation was out of control. He tried to take out his phone to call his boss, but who knew that at this time he would meet Jack. As a result, the phone turned into a banana from who knows when. In the surveillance room, all the cameras had been hacked. Taking advantage of that, Kinney approached Owen and hypnotized him. He led Owen to a small room where they had set up a live broadcast camera. At this time, the four horsemen gathered and prepared for the next steps. Owen inside appeared on the screen at this time. He said that he had invited the four horsemen here so that they could expose his crimes. The three horsemen appeared at the same time. The audience below applauded endlessly for this return. Unexpectedly, the plan went wrong. A strange face suddenly appeared behind them. Outside, the FBI also sent people. Fortunately, Jack managed to close the door and stop them. Dylan saw that the situation was not good and immediately asked the three horsemen to leave the stage, who knew that the mysterious person had exposed them and let the whole audience know that Jack was not dead, and he was disguising himself as a security guard here. Then he pointed out that Dylan was the leader of the Eye, making the FBI immediately rush to control him. But by some miraculous way, Dylan turned the tables and tied all the police together. Then he disappeared without leaving a trace. At the same time, the four horsemen were running away on the roof. Then they slid into a pre-prepared pipe. It took the four people straight to Chinatown, making everyone puzzled about what had happened. Here they met a person named Chase, Kinney's twin brother, who had previously taken everything from his younger brother. Hearing this, Jack intended to rush up and teach him a lesson, but the gangsters in the shop immediately stood up. Chase said that this was Macau, China, so they could not do whatever they wanted. They were puzzled as to why sliding through a pipe would take them so far. But Chase did not say anything more and took the group away. Then took them to his boss, who was none other than the actor who played Harry Potter, but in this movie, please call him Walter. At this time, he also explained why they were here. The story has to be told from a few months ago. Chase had disguised himself as a delivery man. Taking advantage of Kinney's unpreparedness, he successfully hypnotized him. Through this, he knew all their plans. The slide pipe they used to escape had been changed by him. The lights inside directly caused them to faint after leaving the pipe. During this time, Walter took them to Macau. The real reason he brought the four horsemen here was because Owen and he were close friends. The two had jointly invented the smart microchip. It could penetrate any electronic device, bypass all computer firewalls. Through this, all user information can be hacked. Just selling that personal information can earn tens of billions of dollars. Who knew that Owen would then take it for himself? Walter threatened the four horsemen to steal that microchip back, otherwise they would only have a dead end. Having no other choice, the group could only nod in agreement. On the other side, Dylan was still very anxious because he could not contact the horsemen. At this time, a phone call suddenly came in, and the other end of the line was Bradley. He said that he had something to say to Dylan, making him rush to the prison to find him after hanging up. Here, Bradley did not go around in circles, but went straight to the main issue. He told Dylan to get him out of here within 24 hours. In exchange, he would go with him to rescue the horsemen. If he agreed, Bradley would immediately tell him where the four people were. After a moment of thought, Dylan finally agreed, and Bradley revealed that the four people were in Macau. Meanwhile, the four horsemen were preparing some tools. They went to a grocery store to buy some plastic pieces to hide the microchip so that they could pass through the security gate without being detected. But the old lady at the shop said that there was no such thing in this world. This made the group reluctantly go back, then together make a plan to steal the microchip. At this time, they suddenly discovered that the microchip fit perfectly into a card. So the group came up with a way to use the card to hide it. Then they tried to practice how to get the card out without being detected. Not long after, the group started to implement this risky plan. First, Kinney hypnotized a high-ranking employee at Okta Company, then let him allow them to enter the company. But when they passed through the security gate, the guard asked everyone to leave all metal objects outside, ensuring that they would not pose any danger. Then the security captain led them to the supercomputer, which was also where the microchip was hidden. At this time, Kinney kept sneezing, mainly to distract the attention of the surrounding guards. Taking advantage of that, Jack sneaked under the machine and removed the microchip. Very quickly, he was able to attach it to the card. After finishing, he quickly returned to his position. Who knew he was still seen by the security captain? He was suspicious and asked to search them. The first person was Jack. But after a while of checking without finding anything, the guard had to let them go. However, now how to get it through the metal detector was the problem. At this time, Jack remembered that the guard was still holding his wallet from when they entered. So he asked him to return it. Taking advantage of the moment, the guard handed the wallet through the metal detector. Kinney also threw the card through. The plan was thus successfully completed. At this time, Dylan and Bradley had also arrived in Macau. They went everywhere to ask for news of the four horsemen. How did the two accidentally enter the grocery store? As soon as she saw the photo, the shop owner recognized them. She told them that they had left not long ago. Also in this shop, Dylan recognized many magic items. There was even the safe that his father had used to perform in and unfortunately lost his life. It turned out that Dylan's father was also a famous magician named Lionel. But during a show with Bradley, Lionel performed a soul transfer magic trick. He was locked in a locked safe. Within 1 minute, he would break the lock and escape. But an accident took his life. This is what made Dylan hate Bradley so much. This was also the reason why he had previously done everything to put him in jail. Returning to reality, Bradley also tried to do a magic trick, only to see him get into an old coffin. When Dylan opened it, he had disappeared. By some miraculous way, Bradley was able to escape. Not long after, Dylan found Danny on the street, but before they could talk, Walter sent people to chase after them. It turned out that the four horsemen had escaped after getting the microchip. Seeing that the situation was not good, Dylan told Danny to run first. He would stay and fight the thugs. However, he alone was not enough to fight them. Dylan was quickly caught and controlled. At this time, Danny had also run back to his teammates. He told them everything. They discovered that Walter's henchmen were putting a safe into a car. Knowing that something bad was happening, they immediately followed that car. Meanwhile, Dylan had been brought before Walter's father. Unexpectedly, that person was the old man Tressler. He was still bitter about the four horsemen stealing his money. This time, catching the leader, he would definitely not let him go. Then Tressler put Dylan into the safe, then locked it and dropped it straight into the sea. Watching the safe slowly sink, the two fathers and sons were very happy. Then Tressler got into the car and directly thanked Bradley for bringing Dylan here, then paid him the money he had promised before. If he brought the four horsemen here, the reward would be much higher. Under the sea, Dylan was about to give up. Water was constantly pouring in. At this time, he remembered the watch on his body. He quickly removed the hand to unlock it. Fortunately, after a while of effort, Dylan successfully escaped. When Danny saw Tressler and his son leave, he immediately jumped into the sea. Through this, he successfully saved the captain from death. However, at this time they discovered that the microchip was fake. Perhaps a master had taken it from them. But this was also a good thing, because Tressler and his son did not know about this yet. The group decided to use it to overthrow the two fathers and sons. Not long after, the four horsemen appeared online. They announced that they would have a performance in London. This made Walter and his son furious. They quickly boarded a plane straight to the performance venue. At the square, the audience quickly filled the place. The four horsemen split up, each performing in a different place. Jack performed by guessing the position of the girl behind 3 giant cards. Although everyone could see it, yet hundreds of audience eyes were still tricked. On the other side, Lula had a performance with pigeons. She pointed to a man's crotch. Suddenly his pigeon took off and flew away, making the whole audience very excited. Danny was even more magical. When he stood in the rain, he directly stopped the raindrops, making them float in the air very magically. Meanwhile, Tressler and his son were observing everything through the camera. They accidentally discovered that Dylan was still alive, making them even angrier. They immediately sent people to catch the four horsemen. The first person in danger was Kinney, when he had to face his brother Chase. Knowing that the plan had been exposed, he called and informed Dylan. Immediately, he ordered everyone else to retreat. First was Jack. He turned into cards and disappeared. Next was Lula. She called the pigeons and escaped. The coolest was Danny, when he fell into the water without leaving a trace. When the police arrived, it was too late. At this time, Bradley suddenly appeared. He said that he would help the FBI catch the horsemen. Through this, their hiding place was also revealed. Even though they had escaped on motorbikes, they could not run away. Thus, each person in the group was caught. The group was quickly taken onto a truck. Inside, the boss Tressler had been waiting for a long time. He declared that this would be their doomsday. Not long after, the truck took them to Tressler's helicopter. He had people throw the group inside. Tressler told Dylan to hand over the microchip. Otherwise, they would kill Lula, having no other choice. Danny obediently handed it over, but to let them know that this was a fake microchip was even more dangerous. Unexpectedly, when checked, Walter said it was 100% real. However, the four horsemen had lost their value to them. Tressler had people throw the group out of the plane, then brought out a $1.2 million bottle of wine to celebrate with his son. Unexpectedly, this wine was very strange. When tearing the label to check, he saw a card of the eye. At this time, the lights in the plane suddenly went out. Outside the window, the horseman suddenly appeared and called them out. It turned out that the plane had not taken off from the beginning. It was even floating on the river in London. On both sides of the shore were audiences cheering. To do this, we must remember Kinney, when he hypnotized the truck driver to drive everyone to the prepared plane. Danny at this time also loudly announced the team leader Dylan. His speech at this time was also broadcast to the whole world. Through this, all the crimes of Tressler and his son were exposed. With the crime of manipulating the market and stealing personal information, these two fathers and sons will definitely have to live the rest of their lives in prison. Tonight's performance ended with a brilliant fireworks display. But when the police arrived, the horsemen had completely disappeared. Only Dylan remained. He handed over a USB containing all the evidence of Tressler's and his son's crimes. After throwing it to the policewoman, he completely disappeared. A few days later, the group gathered at the headquarters of the Eye. Here they unexpectedly met Bradley again. At this time, he explained that he was the leader of the association. In the past, Dylan's father was also his partner. His death made Bradley feel very guilty. But he had no chance to explain to Dylan. In this case, he tried to secretly help them from distracting Tressler. Even the exchange of microchips was done by him. This is also considered a way to repay Dylan. Hearing this, Dylan also understood many things, directly forgiving him for the past and treating him like a family member. Bradley had also reached retirement age, so he gave the highest position of the Eye to Dylan. So the movie ends here. What do you guys feel? Please leave a comment below. See you again.